Hello guys, welcome to another review on the channel. This time it will be for Persona 5 Royal, which I have now been playing for over a month. Steam says I clocked in over 172 hours, which is ludicrous and speaks volumes for how much content there is in this game. It's truly surreal. I also managed to get all the 53 achievements, and I would compare it to Pathfinder games when it comes to bang for buck in terms of your money spent and value gained. We'll go over the usual different sections in a moment, but I just want to mention that overall, this JRPG has blown me away in every way imaginable. For sure, it has entered my top 5 best games of all time, and it will be one I will remember forever. It's been a while since a game has left its mark on me like this. Ever since 2015 and Witcher 3, I haven't been so interested in a game as I have been this past month in Persona 5 Royal. It's truly a labor of love from atlus, and something so meticulously crafted that it uses style throughout its lengthy, almost 200-hour campaign. Let's go over the different sections now, shall we? NPCs and characters. It's really hard to rate, but I would say this is where Persona 5 Royal truly shines. You are the leader of a group called Phantomthieves that managed to steal the hearts of people by infiltrating their cognitive versions of the world. Using your persona, you'll meet and bond with numerous characters from your school and otherwise. Some of these characters will be critical for the main story and join your group. The game also has what's called confidants, whom may not belong to the Phantom Thieves group, but will contribute in some way to your success during the story. I have to say, all of these characters are extremely well written, and some of the characters' story resonate with me, especially Ryuji, your first companion and confidant, that was dropped from the track team aiming for nationals after breaking his leg due to physical abuse from the coach or physical education teacher. And I know all too well the need and drive to keep doing what you love, in my case is lifting, and not being able to do it because of an injury is really painful. Ryuji is not the only example. I could say every character's background and motivation is so well developed across the 100-hour story that when the credits roll, it feels like these characters are your in real life friends and you have known them all your life. I could go in depth and spend 1 hour just talking about the characters in this game. I spoke about your friends and confidants, but there are also the villains. I would describe one of the major villains to have the same relationship as Light Yagami and L of the Death Note anime, and it's really interesting to see how the writers develop their relationship and how each new chapter in the game brings these two rivals to blows. I also need to add there, Atlus isn't afraid to develop and bring forward art and controversial topics to the forefront of character development. Some themes approached on some of the characters' backgrounds literally involve fraud, suicide, murder, sexual abuse, and the way they are dealt with within its story is very mature and actually pushes some of the character development up and makes it more interesting, whilst not adding these themes just for the sake of adding them, right? It's expertly done by atlus, and some of these characters go into the top 5 of best NPCs in a game I've seen, coming very close to character development I saw in Dragon Age Origins, Witcher 3 or Mass Effect 2. Going to the next section, which is the story. Now, you are forced to transfer to high school in Tokyo. The protagonist has a strange dean that says you are truly a prisoner of fate. In the near future, ruin awaits you. With the goal of rehabilitation looming overhead, he must save others from the distorted desires by donning the mask of a phantom thief. These are the words of the developers, and it gives you a small glimpse of what the true core of the story is for Persona 5. The main theme across all the arcs within this game is injustice as a whole, but first and foremost against the Phantom Thieves group and against society. That's the whole reason driving every single one of the characters in your group. That's the reason you meet, the reason you fight together, and the reason the group even exists to begin with. It all starts with your main character, and as a result of corruption and usage of power in an unjust way, you are on probation and sent to another school to be rehabilitated, not only judicially, but also through the cognitive road. As you go to school and come across your first palace, you also meet the first soon-to-be member of your Phantom Thieves group, whom you can guess is also being treated unfairly by another person in a place of power. That's the link connecting every single plot point and every new member of your group. In some way, either in the past or the present, your companions are being oppressed by someone that's above them in the power chain of command. Perhaps, as you identify this link, it may seem the plot is becoming repetitive and treading the same themes over and over, but you couldn't be more wrong. The way Atlus builds suspense and complements the usage of the real-world and cognitive world is truly fascinating, and as you get closer and closer to the truth of identifying some major crimes going on in Japan's society, you'll be basically hooked to its story. As if what I said wasn't enough to entice your interest, I can say with full confidence there are no plot holes or missing links between side and major points. Atlus delivers a phenomenal story, over 100 hours plus of plot exposition that never lets the foot off the pedal, and marches ever forward to one of the greatest conclusions ever in a JRPG. The royal portion of the game adds a completely new semester to the game, which basically stretches out the original game story, and it's as if it always existed, as Atlus picks up where they left off and continue the story organically, adding a new villain and even more new satisfying conclusion to the saga. I really have no negative or bad point to make about Persona 5 story. It felt complete, and when the credits rolled, all I could do is wish someone erased my mind so I could experience it all over again. Speaking on progression systems, there is a lot here to unpack. Persona 5 has so much going on, not only on the story side of things, but also on how much you can customize your gameplay and upgrade your stats. As you reach your first palace or the first cognitive world, you'll be fighting shadows in turn-based combat. You have your classic level up screen where you get XP from killing enemies. The higher the enemy level, the higher the XP received. There is really no stats to choose from. Every time your character or a companion level up, their HP and CP increase. CP is basically your mana to use Persona abilities. Now, your character plays a small role. The damage is primarily coming from your personas, and in this way Persona 5 is very much built like a Pokemon type of system, where as you fight enemies, not only will you be leveling up, but also the personas that you are holding. Every few levels your persona will gain new abilities. You have basically 10 slots for abilities in your persona. They can range from active to passive abilities, and as all your slots fill up, you can then decide if you want to switch an old ability for a new one or just pass up on it. Like Pokemon, as you can guess, you can also capture enemy personas if you manage to stun them. Throughout the game you are introduced to what's called the Velvet Room. In this room you can switch your personas, fuse them, train them, or even sacrifice them. It's a very deep system that's incredibly interesting, and the concept of acquiring entirely new personas by randomly fusing ones you own never becomes dull. In this Velvet Room you have access to a Persona Compendium, where you can track each and every one of the personas you captured, and even if you deleted one to open a slot for another, or fused it with another, you can always go to your compendium, and by paying up, you can acquire it again. I should have mentioned it, but just like ability slots within your persona, you also have limits as to how many personas you can have with you. This number will change organically throughout the game as you gain new confidant bonuses and the story progresses. That's also true for Persona fusions. At first you may only be able to fuse 2 personas, but eventually you can fuse up to 5 personas in order to build a super powerful one. Additionally, you can use instances to train your personas, so basically you lock them up in a Velvet Room, and you use an instance, and after a while they will have leveled up. Different instance means different stats for the persona will be leveled up. For example, it could be attack, defense, or any other stat that could be focused, depending on the instance you have. You could also sacrifice one of your personas to level up another, for example. Throughout the game, you also receive skill cards, either as rewards or by leveling up a specific confidant, in which you are able basically to give those specific skills to a persona, so you may want to make an OP persona even more OP, or give more versatility to your current roster by adding a specific skill you think could be important to have that you currently don't have. Options are limitless, it's up to you really. Now, small thing to add, but I feel like I should say it because it's amazing. Whenever you fuse personas, you are actually executing them in a guillotine style cutscene to form a new one, which is pretty cool. Overall, I've spoke a lot on progression systems, but believe it or not, I'm not done. When you aren't fighting and killing shadows with your cool personas, you'll be interacting with your confidants, and as school days progress, you decide where you want to spend your time. You can study and increase your social stats, which are comprised of guts, charisma, kindness, knowledge, and proficiency. You can read books to increase those same social stats, watch movies, take on a challenge to even eat a giant burger, for example, watch DVDs, play video games, have a go at the batting cages, maybe play some darts to improve your button pass skills, we'll touch on these on the combat session shortly, or play some billiards to increase your technical damage. But above all, you should be spending time with your companions, be it Phantom Thieves members or other people that, whilst are not fighting with you in the cognitive world, they are aiding you in some way, shape or form. As you spend more time with your confidants, and if you are holding the persona that corresponds to their arcana, you'll be able to swiftly increase your confidant rank to a maximum of 10 and gain unique skills or powers that will aid you inside this cognitive role. For example, an enemy hit may be about to kill you, but if you have in the 4-member squad a companion which you raise the confidant rank, you may be able to survive the hit by having them taking it for you. There is a lot here really, and I could go on and on about this system. Another example is, for example, Confidant, which, as you gain more ranks, you can basically decrease this cognitive rolled security, which means less enemies or less dangerous enemies as a whole. How you spend your day-to-day time is probably one of the most crucial parts of the game. You need to equally focus on raising your social stats, as some Confidant ranks are locked in depending on a specific social stats. For example, you may need to have Guts on max rank, which is 5, to be able to progress the Confidant story forward. I wouldn't say this is a negative, but when you start coordinating and deciding what you want to do on a daily basis in Persona 5, it can be a bit overwhelming, especially if this is your first Persona title, but I found that type of challenge endearing, and you basically make your own fun and determine how you want your days to be. Of course, some days will be locked in due to main story content that you can't adjourn, but overall you have all the freedom that you might want. In hindsight, there is nothing groundbreaking about Persona 5's combat. It's very much at its core a JRPG turn-based combat system. What it really does better compared to others is the Persona diversity that you have at your disposal, and the amount of abilities you can use, as well as the different combat opportunities you can create for yourself with gadgets and items. Let's start out with the basics. The main character can access up to a maximum of 10 personas, so you have the advantage of holding out very diverse personas in your roster, which can counter most of the enemies. There is a weakness system in this game, so any enemy you meet can be weak to a specific element. It can be fire, electricity, ice, wind, curse, blast damage, so on and so forth. Now, at the same time, there are elements for which enemies will outright block you, which means you do no damage, or elements in which they will drain the damage you do and heal themselves with it. Every enemy is different, but some bosses and mini-bosses won't have any weaknesses to any of the elements. What you normally do is either use items or abilities that cause sleep, despair for example, which will basically stun the enemy, and then you can do technical damage, so-called technical damage, which does a huge amount of damage and opens up a screen in-game in which you can either do an all-out attack, which is a global attack using all 3 of your companions and you, or talk to the enemy and capture them if you answer their questions in a manner they like, or ask them for an item. That is also true for when you manage to target their weaknesses, which will also do tons of damage and stun them. Now, in the Persona 5 role portion, they introduced a new system, which is the Showtime attacks. Showtime attacks basically pairs up 2 of your companions, or even you, and basically does a unique screen where you see some flashy type of combat, some flashy type of scene where for example, there is one between 2 of the companions where they are in a ring and they attack the enemy while they are in the ring. It's very imaginative and not true to where you are right now, but it's very cool. The cutscenes are very cool for that type of feature, and I loved it a lot that they added this. The game also lets you control your companions, which have a fixed persona, their unique own persona, that will continuously upgrade as they level up. Now, in the same manner, you can stun enemies by targeting weaknesses and using abilities to make enemies impaired. They can also do the same to you, and if they manage to stun one of your companions, they can basically also hold them hostage and ask you to pay up with an item in the same way you would do them, which is very cool. The developers also had some cool features to combat, like having 8 bullets for your gun in each single combat encounter, a takedown shot, where you can basically stun an enemy immediately and do some good damage, a hail fire at the beginning of the encounter, where everyone in your squad basically empties out their guns at enemies and takes off of their HP. It doesn't happen very often, it's RNG based, but it's very cool stuff. Above all, I love the boss battles. These are specially crafted and can be multi-phased, but they will push you and make you use every single resource available, at least on the merciless difficulty, the one I played. Usually this requires some strategy and not only targeting weaknesses, but also constantly debilitate the bosses by downgrading their stats and upping yours in order to avoid one-shots. Their design and abilities are really well made, and I always look forward to them as they would make you totally use your entire arsenal, be it items, abilities, tools, everything. Additionally, as you fight more and more enemies inside the cognitive world, you can trigger a fusion alarm, which means you can return to the Velvet Room and fuse personas in an unstable environment, meaning you may get new abilities for the fused persona you wouldn't usually get doing a normal fusion, and also more levels, so worth it if you want to experiment a bit. To finish the combat session, I would be remiss in not speaking about it, which is the baton pass mechanic. As you target an enemy's weakness, you basically get another turn with the same character. You can then choose to target it again or simply baton pass to another member of your squad and deal even more damage. The higher the baton pass rank, the higher will be your HP, SP recovery and attack damage. If you target the enemy's weaknesses various times with different members, you can keep using the baton pass and do ridiculous amount of damage the more you use it. It's a very cool feature. Now, the next section, Role, Traversal, and UI. The world of Persona 5 is absolutely beautiful. There is such a wide array of famous Japanese locations you can visit, and as someone who doesn't know Japan that well, it made me want to visit it someday. As you progress the main story, you will start gaining access to more and more locations, could be places to take your confidence to, for example the Inokashira Park, where you can take a slow stroll and speak with the companion, or perhaps go to the mall under Shibuya, visit Shimbosho and acquire new books. There is a lot of options. It's not open world, it's rather small open-ended areas interconnected with each other via the metro or the subway, and the attention to detail is amazing, with the fantastic style that is present in the UI. It's also present on buildings, random pedestrians, confidence, persons of interest, etc. Since I touched on it, might as well give my thoughts on one of the best features within the game, and perhaps the best UI I have ever seen. Persona 5 Royal is incredibly stylish, it pops out in every moment in the game, but not in a bad way. It just makes you appreciate the game even more. Character avatars in dialogue are incredibly detailed, and will even change depending on how the dialogue unfolds. So, when a character is incredibly reactionary and has a vivid reaction to something is said, their avatar will change to express and retain what has just been said in the text box. It's incredibly detailed and so stylish that I would advocate for every game using this type of UI. It's so good. You will see this as the video is playing around of the gameplay, but it's just amazing. Closing off this section, whilst you will spend a big portion of your time wandering around some select Japanese areas and locations, you also visit villains' cognitive worlds, or so-called palaces, and an underground cognitive area called mementos. These are effectively the locations where you will face enemies and work towards fighting the boss. They are very detailed, and each cognitive world is distinct from each other, so the repetition of exploring these palaces never grows. Each one of them will represent the distorted desires of the person and take effect based on that. Exploration is incredibly smooth, you can ambush enemies, so there is a stealth component, you can hide in wall corners and objects as well as sprint if an enemy spots you out. Palaces are very intricate in their design, there are vents, climbable spots, and even areas only reachable using a hook. I love every single palace the same, whereas only mementos being the location that can get a bit repetitive, as it's basically a bunch of floors cluttered together without much setting it apart. Now the cool thing about mementos is it's like floors and floors of different set pieces of enemies, and you'll see when you play the game. But you can ride these floors in a car basically, so it makes the combat a bit more interesting, and it's not as repetitive. You can basically cruise through these floors. Also, as you get to a certain confident rank on one of your companions, you'll basically be able to auto-resolve some of the combat encounters in mementos, which means it doesn't get as dull and repetitive as you would think, because you can basically sprint with your car. The battles will auto-resolve if the enemy is low level enough, so you don't need to grind on the turn-based combat in mementos. But you'll see this as you play. It's not as bad as people say it is, really. Now, music. I wanted to include this section, which is something I don't usually do, unless a game has really captured me in this department. In the rare moment one does, like Persona 5 Royal did, I want to credit it and explain why. The music in this game is probably one of the best I've ever seen since Witcher 3. It sticks with you, you'll add the tracks to your Spotify list, you'll scour YouTube for them, they will sync perfectly with story exposition, and they will make you hum them as you play through the game. As you've seen across this review, and you probably are hearing it, you've already listened to some of my favorite tracks just alone on this review. One of my favorite tracks actually pops up for the very first time almost at the end of the game, and it feels like such a good track to break through all the strife and hardship the group has gone through. One of the few rare moments I even consulted the lyrics of a track. Phenomenal performance by every artist included in this soundtrack, and some of the best in-game music I have ever seen in a game. For my final thoughts, I didn't even add a positives or negatives section in this review, which is hilarious, as I think it's not warranted there. There is not a single thing I would point out as a glaring negative, and as you can probably guess from the tone of this review, there is only positives for me. Persona 5 Royal is one of the best, most complete JRPGs currently on the market. It's also available on every possible platform. There is no excuse not to get it. Its world is endearing, its music makes you fall in love with it, its art style and UI are very unique, its gameplay and progression systems are very detailed, and add upon the traditional JRPG turn-based combat. I'm incredibly excited to try Persona 3 and 4 and be there for the eventual release of Persona 6. This is an amazing game. In terms of replay value, you have New Game Plus as well, I didn't mention that, but it's such a fulfilling game, so many content, so much content, you can have a lot of options in how you handle your day, so the replay value is huge. I think the replay value is really big here. And there's a lot of endings to see, so you can always replay for seeing one or other ending, although you can of course save scum and see the endings. Now, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this review. It's more in-depth, detailed and longer than any review I've done on the channel before, and I think that speaks for itself. The amount of content in this game is ludicrous and it never drops quality. It's actually fucking insane. Insanely good JRPG. Now, in terms of other topics, expect a review on Dead Space in the upcoming days. I am going through the New Game Plus and I'll soon finish it and get all the achievements, as well as the first early thoughts for Hogwarts Legacy. So, see you on the next one, guys. Amazing music that you are hearing right now. Have a good one.